Hello, fashion enthusiasts. I know you are going to absolutely love today's podcast. My guest today is simply awesome. She has lots of energy and an amazing drive. Her name is Alia Khan, and she is the founder and president of IFDC, which stands for Islamic Fashion and Design Council. With her, we are going to learn how fashion councils operate, what initiatives they have, and how they help designers and other industry players to succeed. We are going to speak about modest fashion and why it's here to stay forever. So, let's get this podcast started. Welcome to Dubai Fashion News, the podcast where you can get to know everything about the fashion industry. Here we will interview fashion designers, influencers, models, photographers, shop owners, you name it. And what for? To learn their insights, their stories, and the lessons they learn along the way. I'm your host, Araceli Gallego, recording from the beautiful city of Dubai and sharing with you curated content for fashion professionals from fashion professionals. Stay put. Don't go anywhere. The interview starts right now. Alia, such a pleasure. Thank you.
I'm having fun already. Thank you. This is great fun.
Yes, it's what it's supposed to be. Really, like fun stuff. I want to find out about, because you created the Islamic Fashion and Design Council.
Yes.
What is the mission and the vision of your council?
Okay, so we started the concept in 2013, and we realized that with such a huge mammoth industry that's always been around. Modest fashion has always been in style. It's not like a passing fancy or trend that goes in and out. It's always been there since the beginning of time. So we're talking about one of the largest and oldest consumer market groups the world has ever known. Yeah. Yet there's no council to support and develop the industry and the industry players. So how is that possible? How did that ever happen? So we had to fix that. So we had to create a platform. You see other councils catering to all sorts of fashion, whether it's couture or athletic wear or, but if you're doing anything in modest fashion or Islamic fashion, you really didn't have much support. You couldn't even go to a local chamber of commerce to, see if there was a category that kind of spoke a little bit more to your type of category. So we had to build it from scratch. And basically the idea was to build a platform that would support and develop the industry and the industry players. And we did that. And it was fortuitous because it happened at the same time that the ruler of Dubai, Sheikh Mohammed, had come up with his mandate that Dubai will become the global Islamic economy hub of the world. And of that, at the time, they had identified 7 pillars, which were like Islamic finance and tourism and halal food. And of course, one of them was fashion and art. So we kind of fit right into that mandate. Right from the get-go. So we got busy right from the get-go because there was a lot to do between the UAE and then, of course, Malaysia at the time was the head of the global Islamic economy. So, Dubai came along and presented a little bit of a challenge there for them. And then there were non-Islamic economy-based countries that were also working with us. We did some things with Italy and, so I've traveled the globe speaking about this subject and talking about the industry, which is a very important industry. And I think people don't really realize the nature of the consumer that they're dealing with.
But do we really need Islamic fashion? Does it really need like a council? Can it be maybe part of fashion councils, as you said? Because within Islamic fashion, you have also couture houses, you have pret-a-porter. So do you think we need that extra?
Well, there's a common thread, right? So what's the common thread? The common thread is that all these categories, whether it's couture, whether it's athletic wear, whether it's streetwear, they all require the mandate of coverage, which is what the bottom line is for all of them. Mm-hmm. So they all want to be, full length, not so tight, not so fitted, not so revealing. And so what
are actually the guidelines?
Yeah. So, I mean, it varies from interpretation to interpretation. Right. So what we're very careful about doing is not trying to lead people into anything. So we're not a religious council. We're not trying to tell people how to dress. Okay. We're here to support and develop the industry by the demand of the consumer market, which happens to be a huge demand. So we're talking about a $322 billion spending power by 2018. And when we talk about such a huge consumer market, the general demand is that it should be loose fitting, not too tight, let's say. It can be fitted or tapered, but of course, appropriately so. It shouldn't have plunging necklines, no backless, no, the length should be full length down to the ankles. So, when
the arms?
Yes, fully to the wrist, which sometimes it crawls up, but that's the idea. And so, when we actually started working on the actual council, we realized that the demand is beyond just the Muslim market. So, of course, the primary market is a growing Muslim population. But then you've got a very strong secondary market, which is the Jewish, Christian, and even the mainstream modest market, which is not necessarily faith-based, but they, by choice, like to be more modestly dressed. Yeah. So it's a vast market, and there's a lot of work to do in it.
I think in my case, when I was actually talking with Charlotte, which is one of your members, and I was asking her, what is it a modest fashion really? I realized half of my wardrobe already is modest. Yeah, and I was not even aware. Yeah. So
because you're probably naturally inclined towards that kind of fashion.
Because I don't like the sun too much, so I protect myself. And Of course, I have all the things that are a little more revealing, but in reality, when I realized it's like, okay, following these guidelines is not even difficult. It's not, because at the end of the day, the hijab is not part necessarily of it, right?
Well, the hijab is a part of it. Not everybody embraces it. But by Islamic guidelines, there is a concept of hijab. So it really is a very real concept. The people's interpretations are different. And not everybody's ready to sort of like embrace it fully. And so there's no compulsion in that. So, you'll have different cultures adhering to the hijab in different ways. Some of them do it in a turban-like way, and others say that's not correct because the neck is showing, so the neck should not be showing. I come from an originally Pakistani background, and we wear it a little bit more loose, and this is called a shehla, which is not exactly a hijab. So I have to make that clear that, not everyone is wearing a hijab, although a hijab is preferred. And it's recommended, but the interpretations of the way people adhere to the hijab is personal.
Very different from...
Yeah, it's just, varying interpretations, and we respect everyone that's on their own journey, whether they're modest or not.
How did you actually build a concept? Because there was none before. How did you actually did it physically?
I think when you put your mind to something, you just do it. I think you don't really think about how daunting, because honestly, if I knew what I know now, I'd be like, oh my gosh, I can't. This is not a one man job. And I was probably alone in it for a while. I did have some support staff, and I did have a really amazing associate who helped me, and of course I had great mentorship from so many people in the industry, and I had one or two special ones that sort of guided us. So the support was there from the beginning. And like they always say, look for the signs, and you're doing the right thing. Yeah. So when people start supporting you, when the doors start opening, and when things start happening with relative ease, you start getting convinced that, okay, you're doing the right thing, and this is where you should be. So that started happening, and then the team started growing, and then we started expanding, and the work started increasing. And of course, there's like different government aspects of the work with different governments that want to open up trade opportunities between other countries. We worked with, of course, retailers, the media. We were doing a lot of development programs for designers, even artists. So it's fashion and design. So it was like all aspects of, different types of arts and architecture. So, and what's interesting is it's really a modest lifestyle choice, right? So when somebody dresses modestly, most likely you'll know what kind of art they're going to be inclined towards. You'll know what kind of interiors they'll be inclined towards. So it becomes a more vast play than you would imagine. And so we always tell the designers, you know what? Be smart, think about, for example, what you could do with your skills and your talents for the interiors, for example. Mm-hmm. A lot of designers do that already. They're making cushions and, they get into the handbags and the shoes, and then they get into Dolce & Gabbana's doing refrigerators, right? It doesn't stop, right? So I think as a designer, you also have to keep reinventing yourself.
Yeah. And how legally, for example, do you articulate a council?
So what's really interesting about the legalities of the council is you want to we're headquartered in New York. Okay. In New York, to be very frank, it's a much easier, setup, and it's less restrictions for a council from a government point of view. Whereas other countries, you had to either partner with the government, or you had to be owned by the government, or you had to sort of like have some sort of a government stakeholder in your council. So some of the countries, it was not an option to set up a council. And then what we did was in Dubai, we have an entity where it's a consultancy really. So that supports the council's work. So we do, we do a lot of stuff in Europe too. So we did set up in London. So we are a registered.
You have 9 offices.
Yeah, we're a registered council in London as well. Italy, we're actually now just revamping the office. We've had an office over there, which is really actually quite nice. We were, working on, but we're revamping it because we're getting a little bit more active in Italy than we originally thought we were. And of course,
Italy and fashion.
It's the fashion capital of the world.
Comes together.
And I think surprisingly where we're not as, and this year we're going to change that is, we're going to be setting up in Paris. It's a necessary next step.
And also there's a lot of population in France that actually are...
Huge population. If you look at the Thomson Reuters report from the Islamic economy, it said something like UK, France, and Germany were the second largest buying power after Turkey and I think Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is huge as well. But then when you're talking about modest fashion, you also see demands in countries that you wouldn't suspect. For example, Pakistan is a huge buyer, but no one's really sort of focused on it. No one's really recognized it. And that's kind of like what happened with modest fashion in general. People didn't recognize that people have been wearing modest fashion since the beginning of time. And suddenly I think they woke up because they saw the internet and they saw, these cute bloggers and influencers, who we now call influencers, wearing their ensemble with the matching hijab or the really cool sort of like, stylish look. And they started getting likes and they started getting followed. And before you knew it, you had all these like great influencers from the modest fashion scene that were getting like, 100,000, 500,000, 1 million followers. And so they became quite the leaders in this space as far as style was concerned. And that's, I think, when the world started noticing, the fashion world started noticing and saying, wait a minute, what's going on? And so, of course, if you remember, DKNY was the first one to come up with her Ramadan collection as a result of it. And, there's been hits and misses. We welcome every brand trying to get into this market and adopting this consumer. It's fantastic, but just make sure that you prove to the consumer that you understand them. And that's, some of them have not
it's
done
difficult.
That.
Yeah, it may be difficult. But if you can get adapted, as we were saying, like already half of my wardrobe already is kind of like not too revealing. And I'm not Muslim, or I don't have any particular convictions about how to dress.
It's your personal choice.
It's a personal choice. I'm pretty sure it wouldn't be. The designers that I'm using already could fit into the Islamic or modest.
And there's many designers that have great pieces that are favorites of this market, and we encourage that. We encourage them to come up with more because it's a good market. It's a strong market, and
it's a way to resell it in a way, because they are doing the same thing. It's just like, but we are also fit for
it's a business opportunity, and there's no harm in looking at it as that, as long as you can cater to this market with the respect and dignity that they require, and and give them pieces that they know they're going to use.
True. How many members of staff and members of the council do you have right now?
So we have a global database of almost 12,000, which is industry players, there are, your peripheral categories like photographers. There's a lot of hijabi models, a lot of people that want to become hijabi models. I think that became kind of like the craze. You had, a couple of models doing it in the recent history, and I think it inspired some hijabi girls to do that. So, we have right now our membership is a little bit more flexible. It's a free membership. This year we are looking to roll out a tiered membership where we'll have different categories and different levels and whatnot. Where the first couple of years of our council, we really had to recognize the true needs of our industry players. And now we think that we've got our finger on the pulse of that. We are now getting ready to put together a membership program that will be meaningful on a few different categories. I think we've got about 4 or 5 tiers of membership program right now.
And what would be the benefits?
Well, I mean, I think, it starts from the bottom up in the sense that you've got the emerging designers who require a lot of mentorship.
Right.
There's a lack of mentorship programs. There's a lack of guidance. There's a lack of development programs. So we're working on that. Then we've got...
But how are you going to do it if they're all over the world?
Well, I mean...
Online?
Today, more than ever, we've got technology-based everything, right? I mean, we just, we can do webinars, we can do, web seminars, and we can do some closed, internet meetings and whatnot. So, we have a lot of options today. You might have just heard that we just came off of our Preda Covered Buyers Lane event, which we launched. It was a world premiere in Dubai, and now we're being offered to do it in several other countries. So it's been quite an exciting journey for it. We felt that we've always been known to be disruptive. That's kind of our thing. And it's nice to sort of reinvent ideas. So we've come up with new strategies. So we did away with a catwalk. So there was no catwalk.
Yes, I had that question. How were you showcasing without a catwalk?
We had high projection technology. We were using projection mapping. We had LED screens. So we had about 15 screens and water screens with a holographic effect. And I think it was oh my gosh, maybe 20, 25 projectors. It was quite an experience. You stand there and you're kind of what was really nice about it is that we said to the designers, we just want one thing from you, and we just want you to convey your vision. What is it that makes you? What's your story? And so they did. They conveyed a really nice story through their video shows, and I think it just helped people to connect with them a lot nicer. And it was a very strong sort of idea that we think we can take it to the next level. So we're already planning the next one.
Oh wow!
And we're very excited.
You just finished the
project. I know. It's there's no time to slow down. We just got so inspired, and there's just so many more ideas and so much more.
Wasn't it easier just to use models
well, I wouldn't say it was easier to use models.
Projectors and the holograms and all that.
Well, I mean, the experience, I think, was a lot more exciting.
Mm-hmm. Well, different for sure.
Yeah, when you have the catwalk. Yes. So when you have the catwalk, you have models walking down and back, kind of very in the same sort of order and whatnot. And what happens with it, the catwalk, is by the time you've come to your 5th or 7th or 15th designer, you've really forgotten the first catwalk, right? Mm-hmm. When you do a proper video, it either appeals to you or something sticks with you or doesn't, and you have an opinion and you remember it. And so the narrative that the designers were creating were a lot more had more personality.
Okay.
And so you were able to sort of connect with the designer in a more meaningful way. So we were very excited with the first launch of this concept, and it's only going to get better. So we hope you guys stick around and come back, because there's so much more to discuss about that.
So if people want to join the concept, what do they need to do?
Okay, so at the moment it's still free, so they can do it. They can go to our website.
Go fast, do it fast.
They can go to our website. They can go to www.ifdcouncil.org, and they can sign up. When we start introducing the tier programs, there'll still be some, I think, free mechanisms that we'll have in there, but we will have some sophisticated tier programs where we'll be able to hone in on the various needs and then cater to them.
What is the difference between IFDC and Arab Fashion Council. Because they also have, and here also we have another concept, which is the Dubai Dubai Fashion and Design Council.
I mean, from my perspective, they're all different in the sense that Arab Fashion Council, I think, wants to sort of like work more in this region. I'm not sure if they're only about the Arab designers necessarily, but I think they want to sort of like do their events in the Arab region, from what I understand. And I'm sure you can ask them more details, but they're not necessarily about modest fashion. So you'll see a lot of like Elisab, and you'll see a lot of sort of like off the shoulder, strapless, and that's kind of like catering to maybe the Hollywood starlets or the celebrities or the Western taste, not necessarily Arab, because that culturally is a different type of a look altogether. Mm-hmm. However, the DDFC is, I think, for everyone. So Dubai Design and Fashion Council will basically do work with all backgrounds and have different, but they do hone in a lot on the Emirati talent, which is really nice, and we have sort of done a couple of things where we've had some discussions with them before and stuff, and so they've got a nice vision. And then the Islamic Fashion and Design Council, what we are, is more, it's entirely focused on modest fashion. So we really
no
try
matter from what part of the world.
Yeah, anybody can join us. Anyone can, if you think you have talent and if you think you have something special to offer our vast market, and it's a huge market with a huge spending power that we haven't even scratched the surface on. So if that is something that you think you can do, we're happy to talk to you. We're happy to guide you. We're happy to help you to break into an area that could be a new revenue stream.
You mentioned that IFDC is not about religion,
right? I mean, we're not a religious council. We're not trying to tell anyone to do anything,
right?
Okay. So our whole point is to help the people that are dressing based on a faith-based principle or guidelines, to find their needs easier and by quality designers. So
but it wouldn't be maybe more than Islamic, maybe modest fashion.
See, how do you define modest? I grew up in California, and if you covered your belly button, you were modest. Like, it's like, how do you define modest? It's like, in California, it's like, many girls thought they were being modest, and they were certainly not modest by my mother's standards, So modest can't really be defined, but because the primary market in the modest fashion industry is being driven by the growing Muslim population, and they're being driven by their Islamic-based guidelines for fashion, there has to be something that addresses that Islamic fashion need that was missing.
So that's why you kept the Islamic. That's why.
We have to, because how else are we going to address it?
Mm-hmm. So. And how do you think? Because you mentioned you have offices in 9 countries. How are you influencing or being influenced by the Western and Asia? I think you also mentioned you have some in Asia, right? How
are we influencing, or how are we being influenced? Both. Okay, so I think our work is allowing people to see that there's a norm. Like, it's, the Western world tends to have stereotypes about anything that's foreign to them, that's not like them. If you're not like them, you're strange, and you're, there's automatically some sort of a label, and it can be a good one. It can be like, oh, you're different, and it's so wonderful to meet you, and it's so lovely to sort of like see, your cultural differences versus ours. And then there's the stereotypes, which are not so nice, which, they sort of like label, and they sort of like put people in a bit of a pigeonhole, and they think that, all people that wear hijab are this way, or all, so there's that stereotyping going on, or categorizing going on. So I think what our work did was it opened up this sort of like communication between the people that didn't really understand, and I think we changed the narrative to a certain degree, because we started letting people know that when a woman wears a scarf on her head, she's not oppressed. She's oftentimes doing it, because she wants to. It's her own choice, and she's.
This is critical,
Yeah,
and most of the times when we see a hijab girl, in the Western, we will think, oh, it's just maybe from a conservative family. It's
exactly. And what people don't understand is there's many people in this group that are from the Western convert background. They're Westerners. They grew up in a Western country to a Western family, and then they, sort of studied Islam and decided to embrace it, and they, by choice, started putting on the hijab and embraced the religion. So, it is faith-based. It is by choice. There's a lot of things that go with it that people don't understand. Hijab is a very big topic, and I think people don't understand it. They definitely don't know what it means, and so there is a little bit of that journey that we take, as well.
What does it mean
naturally.
for you, the hijab?
Well, I mean, what does it mean in general?
You said that you're from Pakistan
originally.
but you lived in California.
I grew up in the West, yeah. So.
I'm very interested. Yeah. What is it for you particularly?
Well, I mean, if you just study the meaning of the word, hijab basically means it's a covering. It's a veil, or it's a partition or something, that sort of like covers or engulfs or sort of like protects something, right? So, when you talk about the concept of hijab in Islam, by the token of, covering and whatnot, it starts with the tongue. You put hijab on your tongue and you don't say not nice things, and you don't say bad things. Put on the hijab. There's a hijab of the eyes. So there's so many hijabs before you talk about a cloth hijab. So the hijab of the eyes is you always sort of like lower your gaze when there's something not right going on, or the hijab of the ears. You don't hear bad talk or gossip or backbiting about people. There's a hijab of the heart where you don't try not to feel bad things about people. So there's so many hijabs. There's a hijab of the mind where you don't think those thoughts or negative thoughts or bad thoughts. So there's like so many different varying degrees of hijab that you have to sort of almost perfect before you can make this one mean anything. Okay. So when the cloth is actually embraced, I mean, ideally, you should have a good understanding of how the rest of your hijabs are working. Okay. Are you saying good things? Are you not hurting people? Are you, harboring good feelings in your heart about people? Are you thinking, the right thoughts and not, thinking dark thoughts or negative thoughts? So all that is a very, so if you look at it that way, I mean, I think I would want everyone to embrace hijab in some way or other, so there is no harm.
Backstabbing people.
Right? No backbiting. No, that just makes you feel safer, with a person who's actually, embracing hijab in the right way. So, so the question is, I think putting that knowledge out there, I think giving people a little bit more of an understanding, which, you understand that in the West.
But don't you think that it's maybe like both sides? Because in your case, you reach that conclusion. You alone reach there, and you have the option probably, right? But there's maybe people or women that don't have the option. Don't you think?
I'm sure. Listen,
because society is.
Yeah. Listen, I grew up in America where there were some terrible things going on in American society. In the sort of certain pockets of areas where women were being oppressed, and these are American women that were not being treated well in their homes and whatnot. There's always exceptions to every rule. So it's not just in Muslim societies or Christian societies or Jewish societies. I think it's very dangerous when we start categorizing people and stereotyping people in a certain label, so we can't label people. But yes, there's problems all across the board. I think wherever there's a human being, in whichever, human groups they exist, there's going to be a pocket of them that will certainly, be troubled in some way or other. And that's also our responsibility to educate them as well, and to make sure that, they're also aware of, what certain things mean and what they should mean to them.
I wanted to ask you about the event, about the Preta cover.
Yes.
You say Preta cover or Preta?
Preta cover, buyer's lane. Yeah. So we noticed that we stayed away from the word modest. So we called it Preta cover, which, was kind of playing off the pret-a-porter, fashion term.
I like it.
Which is ready to, pret-a-porter is ready to wear. Preta cover was ready to cover, which means, it's really your choice. If you're ready to cover, this is the event for you. So, and then we called it buyer's lane because we were slowly being called the anti-fashion week, because we felt...
The anti-fashion week?
Yeah, we felt, the reason to call it a buyer's lane is because we really wanted to sort of like populate that type of spirit and that type of activity. And the Fashion Week model to us was slightly broken. You know, there were a lot of things that needed to be fixed, a lot of strategies that needed to be sort of like innovated. You know, again, you know, like we did away with the catwalk, which we thought might be a little bit more interesting. Let's try to give people a little bit more of a, you know, angle when it comes to, you know, how they can see the work of the designers. So, you know, we came up with hopefully an interesting name that will stick with people.
Yeah, it did, definitely.
Good.
What other ways besides the events you guys are thinking to help the designers? Like you mentioned the tutoring, mentorship, education. I think you also are going to have.
Yeah. So, I mean, through the event, what we want to do is we want to put together an event that one can be proud of, that has the quality effects that, you know, that every designer needs to sort of like connect with. And it can be a place where industry players come together and they really do sort of build that commercial prospect for each other. Of course, with the media and everything, building the brand exposure, that's always very important as well. On a general basis, the event sort of serves the overall purpose, and we've got other initiatives as well, where we really feel that the modest fashion scene has so much more potential. You know, there's so many more things that we can do. And so, you know, so we're always excited because there's always new stuff that we can delve into. So, you know, we're talking to, after this event, we've almost doubled our sponsorship commitments for the next one. So we're very excited about it. And so, you know, hopefully that'll give us a little bit more.
That normally is the struggle to get
absolutely. Well, you know, it'll give us more of a margin to sort of like work with some exciting angles and more ideas. So hopefully we'll just keep improving and building upon the event until it becomes a you know, strong contender in the whole fashion scene.
Love that. How do you measure the results of the event? Like, I don't know, like, did you have feedback from the designers?
Yeah.
Or how do you, I don't know, how many visitors maybe came? Or how many buyers?
I think it's all of the above. It has to be all of the above when you're talking about an event like that. And it has to serve the people, the stakeholders, you know, the sponsors left very happy. Like I said, you know, we've gotten double, triple sponsorship commitments. So that's really exciting.
Yeah.
The participants definitely, you know, there was a lot of, our goal was to get between 1 and 5 orders per participant. So, you know, post event, it's still work in progress because, you know, there's a lot of buyers that came that didn't make the commitments at the event, but it takes a little bit more of a time. So
and they will negotiate. Right?
Yeah, they'll always try, right? So we already have some buyers that are saying, you know, one buyer, for example, chose 5 designers from our event and said, you know, but one of them, I need to really like see them do better with their prices. So already that kind of talk is going on and the negotiations are in process. But, you know, it's never easy, as you probably know, you know, when you're trying to like, you know, build a business for one brand, let alone 35 brands that attended.
You know, 35 designers.
Yeah, we had almost 35 designers and they were all unique. They all came from different parts of the world and they all sort of had something unique to offer.
What was the criteria to select them?
Well, we had a committee and, you know, our partner is Grazia as well. So, you know, we very much so had, for this event, it was Grazia from the content point of view. So there was some content stuff that we were working on with them. And they also launched the Modest Fashion issue which was distributed at our event. So, you know, we had some exciting things going on with them. So, you know, of course, we had to keep that in mind. You know, we wanted to make sure that we were looking at quality. We wanted to make sure that we were really trying to sort of like bring modest designers that weren't necessarily from an Islamic background. We feel that, you know, we kind of had to have a true representation of everyone that's really working on modest fashion and what they can do with modest fashion. So, you know, so we wanted to remain very fair about that it wasn't just going to be all Muslim designers. And so we had a really nice mix. You know, we were very happy and we were thrilled with some of the surprise breakout stars that, you know, that came out of the event, which you know, the buyers were loving, the media was loving. So So there was some great stories that came out of it.
Last week was here Shahid from Blue Meets Blue.
Yes.
Oh, I fell in love with her story.
Her story is great, and she's one of the ones that, you know, that people just sort of got very sort of attached to, and she's got a lovely product. She's got a great label, and she's got a fantastic heart behind her story. You know, she really does care. So, you know, and we should probably tell the audience that, you know, she's got refugees working for her in Chicago, you know, which is not a cheap place to run a business to begin with. And then to, like, you know, pay those types of salaries to the refugees so they can have a home and they can, I mean, where does it, awesome. You know, where do you stop with that story? It's just, you can talk about it for days. It's a wonderful story.
And also I liked a lot Under Wrapped.
Yes. Under Wrapped, it has a great story
kind of
as
like
well.
Activewear, sportswear, really cool.
Yeah, it's modest activewear, and she does definitely know how to sort of like appeal to that type of an audience and that type of a customer. And she's got a very young and hip and, you know, sort of energetic vibe, and that really, I think, captivates people. You know, we had a wonderful woman from Czechoslovakia that came that did abayas that were kind of like a fusion European/Arab abayas, and it's called Talabaya. Her label is called Talabaya, and she was a huge hit. I mean, I don't think there was one person that passed by her pop-up lounge that didn't love her, and including all of our team, you know, because she just knew how to do lovely pieces, and it suited everyone's taste. So it was like you found the local ladies coming and buying from her, and you found, you know, everyone else. It was an exciting thing to see all these designers do their thing.
How long do you need to start preparing for such an event? You started working like 6 months ahead, 1 year ahead? How
I would say it was a good 10 months.
10 months.
It was a good time. And I'm talking full-time working 10 months because there was so much to do. And because it was a launch event, right? Yeah. It was the first one. We really had so many aspects of it that we were trying to like make work, and we had to produce from scratch. It wasn't like it was precedented. There was nothing that was done before. So it was personally speaking, it really, I mean, talk about like being exhausted. I was telling my team, I was like, I think I'm traumatically exhausted. Like, I don't know if there's such a word, but I'm like
we're
traumatized.
Looking for sponsors for Alia's holidays in the Caribbean. Thank you.
Yes. Any suggestions I'll take right now.
I go also. Yes, part of the package.
For two, exactly. Exactly. So, you know, it was such an experience. But, you know, we were also dealing with smaller budgets because it was the first time. So you couldn't expect the sponsors to give you that huge of a budget. But
so, for example, for next ones that you're going to start, do you think you're going to need 10 months to put them together? Because it's in different countries.
I don't think it'll be that long because the next one we do, as I told you, have bigger budget commitments already. Yeah. So we'll be able to hire bigger teams and whatnot. So right now, like, you know, I was literally working probably like 4 shifts, you know, as one person, you know, because there was just so much to do. So I was making sure that I was manning a few different areas. And we had teams, which was really nice. And, you know, we really had great team leaders and whatnot. So this event went very well with the people behind it.
How did you coordinate the people that are actually were helping you for this event? You have like kind of like departments. Like you're going to be taking care of marketing. You guys are going to be taking care of media. You have
to be that organized.
The designers. Yes. What departments did you?
Well, I mean, all of the above. And then, you know, there were different departments. Like we wanted to make sure that, you know, each group of designers had a rep that they could go to, that they could coordinate with. And that rep was responsible for putting all the meetings together for them and putting all the, you know, sort of like, coordinations and whatnot. So we had a lot of different departments. And like I told you, we were lucky, and we also hired people just for the event, right. You know, so we had a much bigger team than what we would normally have. And you know, what I thought was a nice surprise about it was that we had some, you know, really great out of the box thinkers in our team. So, you know, they're all like, you know, coming up with ideas where, you know, I was constantly like mesmerized by that. Oh, that's great. That's great. You know, so that's what you want. You want a creative team. Mm-mm. Yeah.
I hear also that you want to do kind of like a fashion school. Is
okay.
That so?
Yeah. Well, I wouldn't quite call it a fashion school.
Okay.
What we are working on doing is pop-up schools. And these are just sort of short, intermediate, sort of like, you know, level classes that we would have our members participate in, where an expert would come in, and hopefully big names. I mean, I'm going to even go to, our friends in Italy, to Dolce & Gabbana, and, just go to some of these big names and tell them to come on board and start teaching these pop-up schools. Because what I find is a lot of designers don't have time to go back to school. So they don't have time to put in
Once
the whole...
you start your label, you can't.
Yeah. The whole semester or 2 semesters or even a whole year. I mean, it's really hard for them to, but they still need to keep brushed up. I think everybody needs mentorship at any stage in your career. I think you always need someone to look up to that you can sort of like get more advice and guidance from. So hopefully we can come up with a school that kind of gives more of that practical experience, that practical application. So that's what we're looking for, is to put up these pop-up schools in really nice locations. So we do want to make it destination based. We do want it to be an experience. We do want it to be a nice getaway.
Maybe kind of like a weekend kind of a thing? Something
I think probably it'll be a long weekend. There will be those 2 days and 1 day courses, absolutely. But I think some will be like 3-4 days.
Okay.
Which would be a nice proper getaway. And some might even go up to like 5 days to a week.
And it would be like kind of like this kind of level of speakers, like
I mean, well, maybe I'm aiming really high for the first ones because, you do kind of, again, with everything, you have to prove the concept.
Yeah.
Once you prove the concept, then people start getting a little bit more comfortable with it, So naturally, the first couple we're probably going to need to prove the concept on.
So if Dolce is hearing the message, please
get in touch. See that you're at the school. Yes, you have a class to teach. You have a really big class to teach. Exactly.
Let's talk about influencers, because you mentioned that you guys work with influencers. How is it to work with influencers as a council?
I wouldn't say we work with influencers, and I want to be really careful about that, because oh gosh, how do I say this? I don't know how I feel about the whole idea of influencers. I think influencers is a very new category. It's like the new celebrity or new sort of like one that's pushing to be the celebrity. And I think that's too much expectation. Mm-hmm. So I think, for example, where you have your old-fashioned celebrities like Jennifer Lopez, or I come from California, so I'm just naming the ones that I knew that were like in that area. Beyonce, whatever. When you have your sort of traditional old school celebrities, they wear a dress and they make that designer famous because Beyonce wore it or Jennifer Lopez wore it, right? So they had a different type of an effect.
They have a different profession than actually being a celebrity.
That's right. That's right. So what they did for a living, exactly,
or something, they
right,
have that
catapulted them to that level. So an influencer, tends to be famous for being famous type of thing. It's a Kim Kardashian thing.
Kim Kardashian.
So,
although now she's also a businesswoman, and she's been
she
very intelligent from one situation to turn it around and
Exactly. So, and that's a great story in and of itself. So, everyone's got that chance and that opportunity. But with the influencer, I think what happens is there was too much pressure on an influencer, because you expected the influencer to come along and to be able to move a bunch of your products. So, I know brands, for example, that paid a lot of money to an influencer. They flew them in, they did a photo shoot, and then the influencer was supposed to, promote it on her, social media. And often it did not translate into sales.
Right.
So the influencer started sort of like, being recognized, in a different light, because I think the initial light was, oh, she's an influencer, so she will move my products, and that's not necessarily the case. And I think that's unfair to expect that from an influencer.
Some of them may only help maybe with the brand awareness, which already can be.
Exactly. Well, brand awareness, or, she most likely has become an influencer because she had a great sense of style and people started liking and following her. That does not necessarily mean that they'll buy everything that she promotes, or that they will remember the brand that she gets behind or whatnot. So it's not necessarily a perfect formula or a math equation. So, I kind of, felt a bit protective of influencers, and I tended not to, and I still don't hire influencers.
Okay.
So we don't hire an influencer for our events. The influencers that you saw at the event came at their own volition, and they wanted to come to, sort of like whatever, photo ops or whatnot. So, they, influencers are very smart because they want to be seen and they want to go to the right places and whatnot.
They need to keep their status, definitely.
Right. So, there's a different, I think, take on influencers. And I think we have to be fair to influencers. Yeah.
Your global council. Which regions or countries do you think are actually going to be the next big when it comes to Islamic fashion? If there is any, or do you think that the ones that are already there, they're going to develop more awareness about their own?
Well, I think we overlook some of the rising stars. As I told you, and I'm not being biased because I'm originally from there, but Pakistan is really a huge market. But then I think you've got Italy, which is the 4th largest growing Muslim population, and they've already got the Catholic population, which tends to be more conservative when they go to church and whatnot. Yeah. So that demand is there even by them. So they're a very interesting market to watch. And Australia's got a very large, growing, modest fashion consumer market.
Oh, wow.
And so,
when I think of Australia, I always think about the beach and heritage, the breeze and...
But everything has a mirror effect, right? There's the opposite effect to everything, right? True, so there is the other side to it as well. And so I think there's a lot of great markets out there to explore. And the world is a big world. And that's why I tell you, we haven't even scratched the surface when it comes to modest fashion.
What do you want to see the IFDC in 5 years?
I mean, I'd like to ensure that we stay true to who we are, and I'll tell you what that is. A modest fashion consumer is very individualistic. She doesn't follow trends. She's not into what's in, what's out. That's not her lingo. What's last season or what's going to be like the next big thing. She doesn't talk like that because she's first and foremost embrace the modest lifestyle for a higher reason. She hasn't done it to impress you and me, right? She hasn't done it to impress anybody. She's done it because it's her faith-based journey. So that's why she's done it. So on top of that, she knows what she can and cannot do or will and will not do. And so she's a lot stronger in her character. And so when she dresses up, she's more interesting because she's doing it based on her character and not because Jennifer Lopez influenced her. So
won't be the case.
So it's a different type of a consumer altogether. And if brands could understand that and really captivate her, she's your audience for life because she's in it for life.
Right.
She's usually doing this for a higher reason for the rest of her life. She's not doing it until next season. Right. So it's not a passing fancy. So it's a very important message.
That's true. That's definitely very true.
Yeah.
What plans do you have for the future?
Myself personally or IFDC?
Both. Because I think you became, of course, you're the president, but also you became the ambassador of IFDC and the lifestyle behind. So probably we'll go hand in hand.
Yeah. Well, I do need that vacation for myself, by myself, probably.
You can go and speak about IFDC in the Caribbean.
I'm sure I could. Yes. I think when it comes to making any kind of plans, one thing I have realized is that no matter what plans I make, it's never my choice. And I think that too, right? You're a mom and, so, things just happen and you just have to do what you have to do. So I really, when people ask me, what's your 5-year plan and what's the next, I know what I'd like to see, but I don't stick myself to that because I also know that I don't know what's best. Yeah. What I may have planned, there might be something far superior and far more exciting that I could never have. I didn't plan IFDC. Before I started IFDC, if you asked me 5 years before that, what will you do? I would have named you maybe many things, but definitely not Islamic Fashion Design Council. Wow. I was a California girl.
What did you used to do before actually?
I had a media company, like it was a consultancy of my own, and Procter Gamble were one of my sponsors at the time, and we were doing women-based programming. So it was all like women subjects and topics and really great sort of like fun banter and whatnot. So we did programming for Procter Gamble, and it was, I never thought that one day I would probably relocate from California, at least during the thick of that, to come to Dubai and get into an area that would be so specific, when it comes to this type of dressing. I didn't even know that there was such a thing that would exist So.
And what brought you to Dubai then?
California
is great.
Yeah, no, California is great, but Dubai is not too far from right? Like the look and the feel. I love Dubai too, and so you can't go wrong with Dubai. It's such an amazing, luxurious. It spoils you. Dubai spoils you. It's hard to go anywhere else after Dubai.
So true.
But I came because my parents had retired, and so they wanted to be here. My brother was already between America and Dubai, so his family was here, his kids. So my parents wanted to be nearer to the grandchildren, and so we're usually in our culture, in the Islamic culture, the families do tend to stay a little bit more united, more together in that sense. So me being the daughter, I myself didn't want to be too far away from them. Right. So I also relocated, and because I was quite flexible with my media work, it was I could do it from anywhere. So I had come here, and then about I would say.
Well, how
that was in 2005 I came out. Yeah. So, oh my gosh, we're like 13 years ago. Yeah. And when did we start this? 2013. So who would have known that years after me landing up in Dubai that I would at some point think this is going to make sense. And I did a lot of due diligence. I did a lot of studies on it. It just made so much sense to me. And I was like, why isn't anybody doing this? Like, it was almost like a big question, like, what's the catch? Why isn't anyone doing it? And so that's what brought me here. Yeah.
Amazing story. I love it.
Thank you.
So in case that our audience wants to get in touch with you, we can do it through the website you mentioned, right?
Yeah. So IFD Council, Islamic Fashion Design Council, IFD Council, COUNCIL.org. And they can email me directly, alia.khan at ifdcouncil.org, or they can email my team at office@ifdcouncil.org. And we have a lot of exciting things coming up, so hopefully people will get involved with that as well.
Lovely. Thank you so much for everything, Alia. I loved it.
Thank you.
Well, this was today's podcast. I hope you liked it as much as I did. Isn't she just amazing? I mean, she started alone a fashion council. That is huge. Anyways, on another note, and as usual, I want to thank you for listening to Dubai Fashion News. We are here to share fashion stories that will help you understand better this industry. So if you like it, I want to invite you to subscribe and follow us. Every 15 days, you will have in your feed a new interview, and you will be able to pick the brains and learn from the best. By the way, don't forget to rate us on iTunes. I hope I won your heart and you give me your 5 stars. I know the rating might be a pain to go through, but it is super important for the podcast in order to rank well and get more visibility. Also, I wanted to share that the Dubai Fashion News podcast is looking for sponsors. Yep, I love what I'm doing and I hope you're enjoying it too, but in order to make it sustainable in the long term, we need your assistance. So if you are listening to the podcast and you know someone, whether a designer, a brand, a fashion school, some event organizer or PRs, or even yourself, that would be happy to talk to our very niche audience of fashion professionals and enthusiasts, recommend us. Send us an email to hello@Dubai Fashion News and become part of this amazing project. If you have questions, a topic, if you want us to bring a specific fashion expert, or if you want to come and share your story with us, send us an email to hello@DubaiFashionNews.com. See you in the next podcast.